Welcome to Page to Screen, the podcast where Nikki and Christina discuss books that were turned into movies and films that were adapted from books. As always, we do remind you that spoilers lay ahead. Now, we invite you to decide with us the age-old question, which is better, the book or the movie?
Well, bust my buttons. We're back from spring break with a trip over the rainbow, and joining me, as always, the Good Witch of the South, Christina.
Well, hello, Nikki. How are you?
Magical.
Are you ready to discuss everyone's favorite story about childhood head trauma?
Absolutely. As I hope you all guessed at this point, I know we took a break, but we told you at the end of the last episode, we're doing The Wizard of Oz. Woo! So
Yes.
Yeah.
The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is a 1900 book written by L. Frank Baum, illustrated by W. W. Denslow. It is about the young Kansas girl named Dorothy and her dog Toto, who are whisked away to the land of Oz during a tornado and go on an adventure to return home.
Can I just tell you, those illustrations, probably some of the scariest things I've ever seen.
I know.
I literally wrote down in my notes, world's scariest.
Yeah, one of the stories is that Baum basically wanted to do, Hans Christian Andersen, the Brothers Grimm, but update it for America and make them less scary. And I'm like,
I think you failed, because I am thoroughly frightened. Actually, I was introduced to The Wizard of Oz by the movie. So when you look at the book versus the movie, the book has so much murder.
It does.
I'm reading it and I'm like, wait a minute. Are we sure this is what he meant?
The background story of one of the main characters is that he got ripped apart RoboCop style.
Oh yeah, and every time he falls, I wrote down in my notes, I was like, pretty sure I saw this in Monty Python. I kept waiting for the Tin Man to be like, it's just a flesh wound.
No, for real. But it's violent, but it's still not quite as violent as like some of the Brothers Grimm stuff, because I mean that gets really dark.
Oh yeah, like one of my favorite Hans Christian Andersen stories is The Little Rose Elf. Have you ever read this one?
No.
It's an elf it's a group of elves who live in roses, and they feed off of like love and stuff like that. And they find out one day that the love of this woman whose house they live in is unfaithful to her. So they murder him and bury his head in a flower pot.
Oh, Jesus.
And I read that as a kid. Like, what was the moral of that story? Like, don't be unfaithful or an elf will murder you.
Well, I just remember being a kid and my parents would read to me at night, and I don't remember if it was my mom or my dad, but they were reading the Cinderella one, and they get to the part where the stepsisters are cutting off their feet.
Yeah.
And I just remember them kind of like nervously looking at this like 5-year-old girl like, maybe we skip over some of this.
I mean, I think that explains a lot about our fascination with like murder and crime, because how could it not?
Right.
But I guess it's true. When you look at it in that respect, the Wizard of Oz book isn't nearly as murderous as fairy tales that came before it.
No, but it's still it's certainly a children's book, yet it also has a lot of adult themes and symbolism that even if you just are a kid and you're reading the book as a story, it's interesting, but there's layers that you can get into, whether it's morality or political, that it's pretty smart, and it's a lot more intelligent, I think, that some might expect.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something that's gonna shock everybody. This is the first time I read the book.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's why the murderous part of the book, where I was just like, what is happening, hit really hard for me as an adult. I was like, why did I not read this sooner?
Yes, I read this back, I want to say in high school, and I had one of those Barnes & Noble softcover editions where it kind of goes into the background of the book, which I really appreciate those editions. But so this is my second time, but it's certainly been a while.
Yeah. I've definitely seen the movie like 100,000 times more.
Same.
Yeah. But I really appreciated, like, we've done a lot of these page to screen adaptations, and I think what's so interesting is how the opening to the movie really reflects the book opening, because the description of Kansas and Aunt Em and everybody is so, it's so sad, but she talks about how everything is gray, like the ground is gray. Aunt Em had like that sparkle in her eyes, and now like her face is just ashen and gray.
Right.
Like, it was, while I was reading it, I was thinking of the movie, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I also really enjoyed the fact that the book, Oz isn't a dream world. Oz is a place.
Yes.
Like, you can actually go there. I mean, I was terrified reading the book, and, you know, in the movie, you know, as we know how she got to Oz, it's completely different from the book. Like, she's trying to get in that storm cellar, and the house just rips off the ground. I was, like, terrified. I was like, oh, my God. Like, is the book, like, her dead? And this is what heaven is like or something? No, it's actually a real, Oz is real. Oz is a place you can get to if you can harness the power of a tornado.
Oz is cool because it's sort of like in Peter Pan, the second star to the right. It's there, yet there's still this fantasy, you know, bridge that you have to cross to get there.
Yeah. I like thinking of Oz as a place I could get to. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the time period when it was written, there was a lot of sadness and turmoil in the world, and I'm sure that gave a lot of people a lot of actual hope reading the book, like, oh, you know, things might be sad right now, but there is a place. Like, there's a place I could get to.
When she is so desperate to get back to Kansas, I thought, well, why do you want to go back to Kansas? This place is really rad. But then they established that there are no dogs in Oz because everybody is looking at Toto with wonder. And I thought, oh, well, if it's a place without dogs, then count me out because I need some doggos in my life.
Oh, yeah. I need dog kisses. I can't. Sorry, Oz. I'm leaving. Also, there's a lot of stuff in Oz that is just as sad as being in the real world.
Sure.
There's slavery in Oz. Like indentured servitude, I guess might be the better way to say it than slavery.
Well, that I liked with The Witch, where the flying monkeys, and then she's got this other group of people that she has, made her slaves. And I liked that because it makes it more complicated than just a bad guy with all of, their drones. No, they're forced to do these things because of her. And spoiler alert, when she is vanquished, they are grateful that now they can go back to their older lives.
Yeah. I really appreciate that because there's always a thing, like, when you're watching movies or you're reading books, and, like, Darth Vader has an army of people willing to put on that stormtrooper costume and fight for him, and you have to think to yourself, did they really want to do that, though? Like, was that really something you were thinking about, like, your whole time? Or, like, once he died, did you guys go, oh, sweet, let's go to the cantina for a beer and, like, go like mass produce blue milk? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's always that moment where you really question, well, why would you want to be friends with someone who's like bad all the time?
Well, did you notice in the book all of the references to the North and the South?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that the first time around, and this is 1900. So when she is in the cyclone, she is between the north and the south, and so she's in the place in between. And then with the witches, there's the evil ones are the east and the west, but the north and the south are both good. And I thought that was interesting, coming off the heels of, you know, the Civil War. Like, what is he trying to say with that?
Yeah. No, yeah, it definitely felt like trying to bridge a gap.
Right.
Because at that point, we would have, the South was no longer, you know, seceding. They were back as part of the full United States. So it kind of felt like, oh, you know what, neither one is bad. You can both be good now. Ish.
Kind of.
Let's not get too far.
Yeah.
The book didn't solve all the world's problems. Let's get real. But yeah, it's I found a lot of the stuff that they were saying to be super interesting, especially like only witches wear white is what
Right.
Bach says to Dorothy when she spends the night at his house. And I was like,
yeah,
that's
and it's cool because in her dress, the blue and the white of her dress, they see that as representative of Oz.
Yeah, and they call her like a great wizard because she's wearing their colors.
Right.
I like that. I did not anticipate her journey taking as long as it did.
Yeah, and the ending after the witch is, you know, she melts from, it's the same thing where she gets the water thrown on her and she melts. There's a whole other little adventure that they go on after that.
Oh yeah. And they're always stopping. Like I never thought of it before, but she is a human. She has a dog. They have to eat and sleep. Mm-hmm. And it was always so depressing reading the book, and they're like, oh, they're going to spend the night at so-and-so's house. And then you've got the Tin Man and the Scarecrow who just stand there silently waiting.
No. Okay, so I got to that part where they don't have to sleep because, and there's this line that I really like where the Scarecrow says, it must be inconvenient to have flesh. And I'm like, man, it fucking is. It really
Boy, howdy.
is a show. And yeah, when she sleeps, and it first starts with just the Scarecrow, he's just standing in the corner watching her as she sleeps. And I was like, no, ma'am. No, yeah. Absolutely not. That's so creepy.
She's a 12-year-old girl. Get out of her bedroom.
31-year-old woman. I do not want a Scarecrow standing in the corner watching me while I sleep.
It's bad enough that my dog watches me while I eat. I don't need anything watching me sleep. Like, no, I'm good. But it only got worse when they got to Oz. And each one could only see the wizard one at a time. So there were like days where they were just like standing in their room, just like waiting for something.
I liked that with when they do, because the story is the same if you've seen the movie where, you know, she meets the Good Witch and then she meets the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion. They go to Oz. The beats are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot more time in between things. So when they do get to meet the wizard, they all meet her separately and they see separate things, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I liked that the wizard really like changed to what I think he assumed would be the scariest vision for all of them.
And for Dorothy's, it's a man. Yeah. With that big head.
Oh, isn't that every woman's fear? Yeah, I really liked the idea of Oz as a whole. Like, every section that they went through was really interesting. You know, like the cornfields and the crossing of the river to get to Oz, and the fact that the poppies aren't put in place by the Wicked Witch. They're just naturally growing there.
Right.
But Oz being the ultimate humbug.
I was so excited when I saw the word humbug.
I was I was flabbergasted because I grew up with the movie. In the movie, it is all green. In the book, it is a humbug. It is not. They make them wear green tinted glasses so everything looks green.
And the glasses thing is interesting because some of the stuff that is cut out from the movie appears in other either adaptations or, stories inspired by Wizard of Oz. So like in The Wiz and in Wicked, they're wearing stuff like the glasses.
Yeah.
And I never even considered the idea that the Emerald City's fake, that they have to wear the glasses to see it. And Dorothy and her group, they don't even realize it. Like, they're just wearing these glasses and seeing everything green, but it's because it's seeing it with a filter.
Yeah. I thought that was amazing.
Same.
I was floored when it really dawned on me. I was like, nothing is green?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I do remember seeing Wicked. They had those, you could buy those green glasses. I should have bought a pair. Made everything green. I really, really liked that part. I really, really didn't like the scene with all the mice.
I liked that scene.
No, I like it, but as someone who,
Yeah,
someone who has dealt with a really bad mouse situation, having hundreds and thousands of mice come to carry you away was not something I wanted to think about.
Well, I like the part where they say something like, we saved you, little one, because they saved this like female little mouse.
Yeah.
And then she's like, excuse me, I'm the queen.
Oh yeah, she's like, I'm not just any mouse.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Zootopia.
Oh, right.
When Judy saves the mob boss's daughter.
Yeah.
That's how I envisioned this mouse looking. Like a big, like, Snooki style bouffant situation. I loved it.
No, with everything being fake in Oz, like, the symbolism behind it all is really smart because it's a kid's story, but like, everything means something else. So she doesn't have ruby slippers, she has silver slippers. So there's this whole thing with like green and silver and gold and monetary things. And then the scarecrow is supposed to represent like agriculture, and the Tin Man is supposed to be like the Industrial Revolution and how all of that fits into the plight of Americans. Yeah. And it's just like, whoa, like you don't get that with a lot of kids' stories.
Yeah, and I would even go as far to say that doesn't even carry over to the film.
I think it does and it doesn't. It does if you know. If you know, you know. But you wouldn't necessarily grasp that from the movie if you didn't know what he had in his mind. Whereas with the book, I think you could pick up on some of that.
Yeah. Can we discuss the murder for a minute?
Of course. We can always talk about murder.
So for anyone who hasn't read the book, what the wizard asks, this is where murder comes into play. First of all, when they all see the wizard one at a time, the wizard is like, yeah, I'll give you your heart, I'll give you your courage, I'll give you your brains, I'll help you get home, but you have to kill the witch. And it's like, what? And as someone who's watched the movie, once again, I was like, no, you just wanted her broom. You don't mean like stabby, kill. And he's like, no, you gotta kill the witch. But
it's very The Godfather, Corleone, like,
yes,
you do something for me, I do something for you.
Yeah, like, it's a greasing of the palms. It is so weird because it got to a point where it's like, I know what is happening here. I know about the wizard, but is the wizard just super greedy, and is the wizard going to take over, and is that why he wants her dead? Like, I was very floored by the fact that he demanded a sacrifice, basically. Mm-hmm. But then it got weirder as the witch was trying to stop them from coming to her castle, and she sent out I think it's the wolves first. She sends a pack of wolves out there, And Dorothy sleeps through this entire scene. How? Don't know. But the witch sends a pack of wolves to the woods, and the Tin Man just chop it away. All of them. And then the line is something like, Dorothy wakes up and is shocked to see them all on the ground. Shocked? I mean, screaming. Like, I don't want to be around any of you anymore.
He's like, hey, I do what I do.
Yeah. Well, and then the crows come, and everyone knows how we feel about birds by now. So this one wasn't nearly as bad for me. But the Scarecrow just starts snapping necks like it's nobody's business. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you couldn't even get across that lake earlier. Now you're going to snap some necks? Okay. And then the bees. They know bees are dying, right?
Well, wait, I like with the Scarecrow because he's like, oh, well, I'm a Scarecrow. I scare away the crows. So he's just like standing there, and then he starts snapping the necks.
Yeah. Well, they see him and they're like, ooh, a scary man. Of course, if you've seen the illustration, he is a scary man. And then the lead crow is like, he's weak. He's nothing. We can get him. And then the Scarecrow's like, okay, snap, 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 snap. Now I don't want to go into a cornfield. I'll see a Scarecrow and just assume it just like, how does it scare away crows? Easy. It just snaps all their necks, apparently. Like, it was murder times 1,000 at this point.
And just think, like, right now we're rewatching everything Star Wars in order of, like, the timeline. And we just watched an episode in Clone Wars where I think it's one of the clones, like, grabs somebody and snaps their neck. And we were both like, oh, geez, that's pretty violent. Like, the way it's done. But imagine that times, like, 30.
Yeah. No. And that's where there's like a fine line between children's book and not. Like, everything up to that point was very child friendly, and then you have a mass murder in the middle of the book, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm glad I read it as an adult. That would have given me nightmares.
I mean, there's like violence earlier because like the Tin Man, his backstory is done earlier where like his body's just getting chopped off and then replaced with the metal.
That's so bizarre, too. Especially the part where his head falls off. And the guy's like, I can build you a new one. I'm like, I don't think it works that way. I don't think that's how you do it. Don't do that. But, post-murder, just, you find out that the witch can control the winged monkeys because of a magic crown. And that's the only reason she has anything that she has in the kingdom. Because you can only use it 3 times. And she used it to... The first time was to...
get rid of the wizard, right?
Yeah.
She enslaves the people and yeah.
Yeah. She wanted the wizard out of the West. And then she enslaved all the Winkies. And now she's using them to pick up Dorothy and send her to the castle so she can get those shoes. So,
I feel like the witch is less scary. Even though she has more scenes and more moments and story. Like, it's just, like, weird. It's like she does weird things. And the way that she describes stuff, like, it almost seems like she has less power.
Yeah. It made me feel sad for her.
Agree.
Because it's like she has a limited amount of power of her own, but she needs more power to actually do anything. Like, she is basically powerless, in my mind. And that's the main reason why she wants her sister's shoes. But it also goes back to the thing where it's like, why is she so obsessed with these shoes that belong to her sister? And like sometimes when I was reading it, I was like, maybe she's the younger of the two, how like the older child always gets, all the new cool stuff, and the younger one has to wait for the hand-me-down. Just waiting for her hand-me-down of shoes.
So you're saying that she's got like the little sister trauma?
Yeah. Probably that thing where it's like an heir and a spare kind of situation. Like, I just felt bad for her, and I know I'm not supposed to. You know, she's got Dorothy locked up.
If the shoes let you go anywhere, where was she gonna go?
That's a really good question. But is that... The other thing is, I don't think that's the only power from the shoes.
Right.
I mean, that's the only power we get to experience with the shoes, because that's how Dorothy gets to travel. But I'm certain that there's more to it. And if Dorothy was able to travel outside of Oz, what's to stop the Wicked Witch from traveling outside of Oz?
Oh, shit.
Right? Look out, here she comes. It's interesting because I do wish that we could see more of what the shoes could do, and I was really hoping the book would elaborate a little bit more.
Question, do you have any desire to continue on? Because it's a whole series of books. Do you find yourself curious about the other ones?
Well, there's like 14 of them that he wrote himself. And then there's like 20 more.
Them,
There are 20 more that were written after he died. So I'm like, if they're all around the same length, I don't mind throwing one in here or there. But I have seen Return to Oz, and I am frightened. Scared. I don't want to watch that ever again. That's like watching The Witches for me. Can't do it. Scared. Gonna pee my pants, maybe. So we'll see. To much of our listeners' delight, I have started reading Ready Player 2. So anything's possible now.
Well, I was interested because I was reading about his politics, and although there's some questionable ideas that he had there, he was for gender equality, and I think it's like 2 or 3 of his books are considered to be quite feminist, so I am interested in seeing if those are available or at least floating around the internet, because I know they haven't reproduced many of his stuff recently, so I'm a little curious.
Oh yeah, he wrote so many novels, screenplays. Like there's at least 42 scripts and like 200 poems. Like, there's plenty of his stuff to read somewhere.
Right.
But yeah, I think I would probably venture down that yellow brick road one more time, just to see, because I am a completionist. So when I start a series, I do have to finish it, unfortunately.
Yeah, same.
So I would do it, especially because I'm intrigued by what comes next. You know, how in the book is it? You know, like, she leaves Oz. Like,
well, and it's set up where the Tin Man, Cowardly Lion, Scarecrow, they're not just standing there as she leaves. They actually get like new jobs in Oz. So they all have their own place now.
Yeah, they're all doing their own thing. Can we talk about the China section?
Yeah.
Going back to like his alluding to like real life stuff, the guy who's all broken.
Yes.
Was so sad for me.
It was very sad.
That is something that I was intrigued by, because the only other time I knew about the China section of Oz, and the China section comes in where they're leaving. That's when they left, right? They left the witch's castle and they're on their way back.
It's the weird in between where it's after they kill the witch and before they get to Oz. So it's like a whole nother adventure that, to be honest, like, it's a little weird that you have like that much more to do after the big bad is gone. So they end up in this place where they're super big and everything else is much smaller, and it's all made out of China. And then all the individual people are a lot of like the kind of like China figures. So it's like China dolls. It's a milkmaid.
Yeah, like little tchotchkes that you'd keep on your shelf.
Right,
Which Dorothy says she wants to pick up that girl and put her in her pocket and take her home.
It's a person, Dorothy.
She wants to kidnap a person and bring her back to Kansas.
She's cute.
Oh my goodness. And then there's one guy that's completely broken and keeps being put back together, and he's basically touched is a nice way to put it. You know, he's not all there. A couple quarters short of a dollar
because he fell apart.
Yeah. And it's weird because that whole section just felt like it could have been omitted.
It does.
I'm not understanding. I guess I'm not understanding why it was there. But I found it interesting that when Disney did Oz the Great and Powerful, they had that section in there. Except they weren't all figurines. They had like teapots that could talk like Beauty and the Beast.
Again, going back to Baum and his symbolism, it's weird because they're afraid they're going to break something because they have to like kind of like walk through it.
Yeah.
And the only thing that really breaks because of what they're doing, there's a couple things.
Yeah.
But the biggest one is the church, is that the Cowardly Lion like steps on the church and like crushes it. Yeah. So, I mean, you can pull whatever you want from that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to dig out of that one. It was just, oh man, it just felt like the wrong time.
Right.
For that. Yeah. But then they finally get back to Oz and they discover the humbug. I love that word. Humbug.
Yeah, he's just like an old white guy swindler who has been using tricks. So he's got like a paper mache head. When he tricks what is it? It's a scarecrow. He tricks the scarecrow and he dresses up in drag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated.
Category is humbug.
Humbug realness. Shantae, you stay. I loved that. Oh my goodness. But what I really liked was the section after he finally gives the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Lion the stuff that they think that they need.
I love that part.
And I have it right here. It's how can I help being a humbug, he said, when all these people make me do things that everybody knows can't be done. It was easy to make the Scarecrow and the Lion and the Woodman happy because they imagined I could do anything. And it was like, that's the whole thing.
Right.
Like everyone, and they never needed it.
Yeah, he gives them the placebo.
Yeah.
He's not actually, magically giving them a heart and a brain, and the Cowardly Lion is courage. He is giving them these trinkets, so it's like this little heart thing that's sewn together, and he, makes a big show of putting it in the Tin Man. He's not actually giving them those items, but he's letting them believe that they had it. So it's similar to Dorothy and her slippers, where they had it all along. Yeah. They just needed to believe that they have it.
Yeah. They never... It's kind of like how you look at society now, where until someone tells you you're beautiful, you don't often believe it. Which is why we're always we're looking for the most likes on Instagram, or, we're reaching out. That's why the people do thirst traps, It's
Nikki, I believe that you are beautiful.
Oh my God, thank you. You are beautiful.
You're welcome.
But that's how that's what it reminded me of, is like, because the Scarecrow was smart. He came up with a lot of those plans.
He did.
To help them. The Tin Man cared about the well-being of his friends and Dorothy. He has a heart. And the Lion was brave and courageous, especially when they went through that weird jungle part of the book where there was every animal known to man. Like, it wasn't... It's that we can't see in ourselves what we already have. We need someone else to see it for us.
Validation.
Yeah. This book is real deep, you guys. For about 100 pages, there is a lot going on.
Did you, by the way, when they do catch the wizard and he is showing who he is for the first time. It almost felt kind of like when serial killers are caught and they're almost like happy to tell investigators or detectives what happened. It's like half like, listen to what I did. And also like relief, like finally I can just show somebody who I actually am and what's been going on this whole time.
Yeah, it's also like Batman villain-esque.
Yeah.
Where they captured Batman and they're like, let me tell you my plan. But it is also kind of sad too, because the wizard was a famous balloonist, and his job was basically getting people to come in to like circuses and stuff like that, and then one day the balloon just got off the ground and drifted away. He also has no control over what happened to him.
Right.
So in that respect, it's kind of just like, it's sad, especially looking back on how he asked them to murder. He asked them to murder another person who also had no power.
Yeah, and I thought that it was like, well, I'm going to give them this task that is impossible to, complete. But if they do complete it, then hey, one of my biggest problems is gone.
Yeah.
But also, it's the wicked thing. There's a version of this story where this nice lady is murdered by this little girl because her like ex-boyfriend, told him to do it or something. Like there's two. Well, I guess she's enslaving people, so that's not so good.
Yeah, I mean that's bad.
Yeah, that's kind of bad.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't enslave people.
Yeah, that's bad.
That's a little bit less in the gray area.
Yeah, but yeah, like I think that's what I appreciated about the book Wicked. More like it gives you a little bit more insight, and I wonder if that's what really colored my version of the witch in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, because I had read Wicked, what feels like 100 years ago, pre-Broadway. Everybody, I was not bandwagoning. I clearly recall my Nana buying me that book at Barnes and Noble. We lived in Florida, and I was probably too young to fully understand everything that was happening in that book. I was like, look, the Wicked Witch is on it. I want it. And she was like, okay. But because I had a hardcover copy. That's how old it was. But yeah, like there's such a sadness to her in that book that I think might have colored my interpretation of her in this one.
It's a horse of a different color.
Yeah. My favorite line. Shut up.
I do find that, like, out of all of the Lost Girls, that Dorothy's a really strong character. Like, she stands up to the wizard. She stands up to the Cowardly Lion before they understand, what's going on with him.
Yeah.
Like, she's this little... See, this part... Like, she's smart, and she's got a smart mouth, because... At one point, the Scarecrow says something like, well, I don't understand why you want to go back home. And she's like, well, that's because you don't have any brains.
Yeah, she is sassy.
Zing. She is sassy.
Apparently, the library was open the entire book. And she was just like, let me read you for filth. And she is such a caring person, too. Because her whole thing is she wants to get back home to be with her family.
Right.
And she's not going to let anybody stand in her way. Like, I appreciate a woman who's got a drive and goals. Dorothy, yes. You did it.
There are some good lines in the book. Like, there's one that made me laugh, and it's when they discover the Tin Man, and he says, I've been groaning for over a year. And I was like, man, we all have.
COVID, man. COVID. I also liked when they meet the lion for the first time, and he's telling them, like, oh, he's like, he's scared, and he thinks he was, like, born that way or whatever. And the Tin Man goes, perhaps you have a heart disease.
Yeah, that made me laugh, too.
It's like,
perhaps you have high blood pressure.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Do you have hypertension? You good? It's like, what?
Do you have an iron deficiency? When have you last gone to see your PCP?
Yeah. If you just cut down on the salt, you'll be fine. There were just so many random things where it was just like, what? Oh my goodness. But yeah, I really appreciate when we get to the end of the book, you find out that Oz is real. Oz was an actual place that Dorothy came back to, and the length of time she was gone in Oz, she was actually gone in real life. And her, like, Aunt Em and Uncle, I almost said Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen.
I heard you about to say Uncle Owen.
I was like, oh God, stop. They were actually, like, rebuilding their house. Their house actually went to Oz. Their house is in Oz as we speak. Like,
so crazy.
I could not believe that that's how they ended it. Because I'm so used to the ending of it just being like, it was all a dream. All I need is in my home. It was like, well, no, apparently not, because now you don't have one. And the fact that there are a pair of silver shoes somewhere in her family's farmland that can take her anywhere. Like, it's a very hopeful ending.
Yeah.
I was very excited for her. I was like, oh, I hope she finds those shoes.
Did you like it overall?
I did.
I did too.
I really did. I always have a soft spot for a good kids book. Something that's smart and educated, and something that has a little bit of something for everybody. Mm-hmm. So I was really excited about this one.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, it's got some dark stuff in it. It's got some strong characters. It has, you know, symbolism. It makes you think about things more than, I mean, just like the wizard, who the wizard is, that will make a little kid think a little bit more about questioning authority, which I think is a wonderful thing to do. But in a certain sense, I think that some, like, current kid stuff is dumbed down, and this explains things. Like, one thing that's a very kids book is that they're constantly repeating what the characters want, how they're reacting to things. That's a, you know, very little kid, but there's more to it than I see in current kids stories.
Yeah. And their wants are all justified by an action in just about each chapter of the book. Whereas instead of, like, even on kids' television shows now, it's like, oh, I want an ice cream. I get an ice cream, that's it. You know, like, there's a definite actual need for these items, but you learn about yourself along the way.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think they definitely don't do children's books the same way they used to.
Right.
Like we said, there's so much murder. Like, honestly, I feel like if more kids had grown up reading some of those books, we wouldn't be in some of the issues we have right now. We wouldn't have kids eating Tide Pods. Like, come on.
Well, are you ready to talk about the
let's
big one?
Let's trade in those silver shoes for a pair of red ones. I'm
so excited.
I am so pumped. First of all, I love Judy Garland. Exclamation point.
Garland.
Period. You know. So oh my God, I
love Judy.
Her voice.
Ugh.
Everything, like, I don't want us to go into all the negative aspects.
Yeah,
it's not.
We could, yeah, but
I don't think that that's something we should focus on with this.
Yeah, that's something that at this point is pretty well documented. I think that at least you and I, if not most people listening, would be all on the same page for it. So
yeah,
we can look at The Wizard of Oz as it is.
Yeah, we're gonna pretend everything was peachy keen.
We just won't. We won't go into a deep dive.
We'll talk about some problematic issues, but not those problematic issues. Because watching The Wizard of Oz gives me these wonderful feelings of hope and happiness. And when you start to think about those background things, it kind of takes away from it. So this is one of those areas where we can separate Yes.
We're
going to separate the art from all of that. But
well, one thing to think about is that there's this joke in the Mommy Dearest book when she's talking about when Judy Garland was over at Joan Crawford's house and everyone would ask Judy to sing Over the Rainbow and she'd pretend like she didn't want to and then she'd end up singing Over the Rainbow.
Yeah. Well, she did that her whole life.
But I think that she had a love for it still.
Yeah.
Like even she could separate what was going on from the movie.
Yeah. Well, this was Judy's big break. This was her number one thing. And I cannot imagine.
Nope.
I can't think of anyone else doing it. Like, don't even get me started on that whole Shirley Temple thing.
I know.
She could never. Here's the thing.
No.
Judy Garland could do Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple could never do Judy Garland.
And it's funny because Wizard of Oz was a VHS that I watched constantly when I was a kid. And our boy, the Tin Man, Jack Haley, is in this Shirley Temple movie that I love, Poor Little Rich Girl, that I watched all the time too. But she just wouldn't have been the same in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. I think she would have been more age appropriate. And she might have worked out better for, like, the original design and ideas behind it. Back when they wanted Judy to have that blonde hair and the baby doll makeup. She might have worked for that, but if we are inserting Shirley Temple into the final product, no, it just wouldn't have been the same.
Just think aesthetically of the, our group of four, skipping down the yellow brick road.
Yummy.
Over that there road. No. Skipping down the yellow brick road.
The road. Oh, yeah.
But no. Now I'm just thinking of Pet Cemetery over on that there road. Now you think of the four of them skipping down the yellow brick road, and that just works. But then you think of Little Shirley Temple between the three guys, and it doesn't look as right.
No,
right?
The height proportions.
Right.
Yeah. So where do you even begin with talking about this movie? Like, there is so much.
So The Wizard of Oz is a 1939 film, and it was something that MGM wanted to do because of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So they wanted to capitalize on what occurred with Snow White and do a big Technicolor movie, something that hadn't been seen before, and they could market it to kids as well as adults. And the pre-production on it is just crazy. There's so many missed opportunities for a lot of different people, actors, writers, directors, but somehow it ended up working.
Yeah, and it's what I always found so crazy about, The Wizard of Oz is it came out in what is considered to be the biggest year in Hollywood history. I mean, you have The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, which was directed by Victor Fleming, who directed parts of The Wizard of Oz until he stopped to do Gone with the Wind. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Babes in Arms, Goodbye, Mr. Chips. All of that is in 1 year. It's
crazy.
It's just insane to think of what that must have felt like to be. It's one of those things where I'm like, man, I wish I was alive in 1939. You know, to be able to have blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster. Although Wizard of Oz wasn't considered a blockbuster at the time. Mm-hmm. So it's just crazy that all of that happened at once. And that's like, ugh, I love it. But yeah, there were so many different they had like 4 directors for this movie.
Yeah, they did.
Which I think is insane.
It's mind-boggling that they had that many people. Even the script had all these different people, even like down to Mankiewicz working on it, that you get such a good movie with the change of hands.
Oh yeah, they had like the top of the top working on this. And I think that's why the end product is so good. Like you have bits and pieces from everybody in Hollywood, basically. And it made the film.
Right.
It's so crazy.
This movie, for me, is one of those movies. When you talk about anything can happen in the movies being magical, this is just like up there with maybe something like Singing in the Rain, that it is as movie as I can think of as being a movie. It's got such good effects and so fun to look at. And yet there's little things like there's a part where Jack Haley is on the ground and you can see his white shirt underneath the Tin Man costume. But I love little bits like that because it reminds you that it's a movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, in that dance number, there's a part where you can see, because Judy Garland didn't like wearing the shoes because they hurt her feet, you can see her in her flat dance shoes.
Right.
But Singing in the Rain, On the Town, The Wizard of Oz, they're the films that fill you with so much happiness that it's like it's a movie. And there are parts where you definitely know it's a movie, like continuity issues here and there. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just a really fun time.
Do you cry?
In The Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
And no.
Really?
Yeah, I don't cry so much as I have a smile from beginning to end that ends up hurting my face. I cannot stop from smiling. Once the screen goes to color, I am in it. I'm in it to win it.
I smile. It makes me very happy to watch this movie. And yet, anytime that Judy sings Over the Rainbow or when Dorothy is crying, I look like the doorman crying.
See, I don't cry, but I get these painful goosebumps. Anytime Judy Garland sings, period, I am enthralled. I am mesmerized. She could be casting a spell on me. Like, I do as you wish. I'm here for you. Like, she could okay, well, I know we talked about not enslaving people, but like, if she wanted to, Hi, Judy.
Judy Garland could sing Wet Ass Pussy and I will start to cry.
Oh yeah, because it would be the most operatic, beautiful version. It'd be like, WAP, yes. Just like, it's just, she is so pure. Like, I really, like, even Jessie will stop for Judy. Because there's just something about, she's mesmerizing. Like, every year Jessie and I watch Easter Parade, which is one of my other favorite Judy Garland films, and she's just stunning. Like, it's not just about how she looks, she carries herself in a way that is very present in The Wizard of Oz. She plays a really good, I'm sure of myself character while also not being sure.
Oh, exactly. There's a part when it's at the beginning when she's with the fortune teller and he's saying about what he's seeing with Aunt Em in the crystal ball, and you see her and her eyes are so big and it looks like she's about to cry, and she leans in and she looks into the crystal ball as if like she wants to see what he's seeing. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, and just how vulnerable she is in that moment and scared and sweet. Then you have her just like the book, and she slaps the cowardly lion, and she has all of this, courage and strength behind her, even though she's just supposed to be a little girl. She can ride both. Yeah.
This is just a Judy Garland appreciation podcast now. Like, I have nothing, there's not a single bad thing about her in this movie. She is, and for this to be her first major motion picture, like, she had done a lot of the Andy Hardy shorts and stuff like that, and she had performed with her sisters. But I can't even imagine what it must have felt like to be in that moment. Like, oh my goodness, you are you are Judy Garland. You are going to be the singular star of this movie. I do wish, when you talk about Somewhere Over the Rainbow, she was supposed to sing it again.
Yes, when she's captured by the witch.
Yeah, and I wish we could hear that version because, sorry, Les Mis, this movie did it first. She had to sing live.
Right.
And apparently everybody cried. And I'm sure that version, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow is always an emotional song. Like I said, it gives me like the most intense goosebumps of my life. But I'm sure that if that had stayed in the movie, I probably would have been a mess from that point on till the end of the movie. Just like, because once I start, I can't stop. I'm like a Pringles can.
It's sad because, she wants to go over the rainbow and then she gets there and she is miserable.
Yeah. But I think much like the Cowardly Lion and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow develop over time and you realize they had everything that they needed the whole time, I think Dorothy. I think Annie M. I could do the whole movie. I think that she really grows and develops too because there's a part at the I can't now. Because at the beginning when Dorothy is trying to tell everybody that Mrs. Gulch is so mean and trying to take Toto away, and she goes up to Aunt Em and she's like trying to talk to her, and Aunt Em turns to her and is like, you need to find a place where you're not going to get into any more trouble.
Right.
And I'm like, how much trouble? Like, and then she goes to, and does the whole, like, crystal ball reading stuff. And she tells him that, he's like, oh, your family doesn't listen to you, blah, 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 or something. And it's like, has she been acting out her whole time? Because she doesn't have her mom and her dad. She lives on a farm. She purposely takes Toto away that she knows is going to get Toto into trouble. Like, she's doing a lot of things to act out, and I think that going to Oz and going on that journey, she really grows and becomes more adult.
Right.
And I really love that. I love that extra piece because it's not something you get from the book. Like, in the book, she is already like a semi-strong character. Mm-hmm. And she's just like a little girl. But in this, you have someone transitioning from what seems like a teenager into, a very strong young woman.
Right.
And I like that addition.
Speaking of additions, although you were saying how you enjoy that Oz is an actual place, I do love the framing with the characters that you meet at the beginning of the movie are the ones that she meets along the way, and the whole she gets hit on the head, so then it continues off into her. It's the same thing where like the house goes into the cyclone, but I love that kind of idea of the story being, is it in her head or is it something else?
Yeah, it's more fantasy.
It is.
Yeah, and I think that goes with the time period too, because when you look at when the book was published, people needed a place where they thought there would be hope. So now they have Oz, this real place. And now we're in the, late 30s, and we don't really need the escapism. What we need is like a comeback home situation, and that's what we get. So, but just like in the book, we have the tornado. She gets hit on the head, and she lands in Oz, it is such a cool transition.
It's so cool. And it's shocking to me that the first bit in Kansas with the sepia tone, I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, I think you did.
Sepia. Okay, thank you. It's almost 20 minutes. It's like 19 something minutes in Kansas. I would think that they would have less time in Kansas, but that 19 minutes is so important because I just get goosebumps. When she goes and she opens that door and then walks out into this Technicolor dreamland, it is such an impactful moment in filmmaking history.
That still gives me goosebumps every time. We're talking about it. I'm like, oh my God. But you know what? This is funny. I was talking to Jesse about this earlier. So, like I said, the film wasn't a big hit until they started playing it on TV. But they didn't start playing it on TV until like 1959. So here's a fun story. Okay, when my mom was little, they didn't have a color TV.
Right.
So my mom watched like The Wonderful World of Disney, in black and white, like the whole like the world is a carousel of color. It wasn't. It was black and white.
It wasn't.
So when they started airing this on television, could you imagine? Because you didn't see it, if you didn't see it in theaters in 1939, and the first time you are watching it is on a black and white television, could you imagine the shock you had when you finally got a color television?
It's funny because when I was a kid, my parents would show me black and white movies. So, I mean, I was watching Charlie Chaplin, older movies, and I remember my shock the first time I watched The Wizard of Oz, and she walks out. I just didn't expect it.
Yeah.
I didn't know. But then that shock is such like a nice, fun purity shock, but the shock of like, wait a minute, I've been watching this movie for 10 years.
Yeah. Like,
I had no idea.
Every time that scene happens, I think like of those people, like, could you just, I can't even fathom having that feeling where it's like, it's a great movie. I don't know what the fuss is about. And then like 4 years later, you upgrade your television and you're like, oh my God. I've been doing it wrong the whole time. It is, Oz is, like, Munchkin Land is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. I would live there in a heartbeat. Witch feet under my house and all. Like, sign me up. Where do I go? I want to be the tallest Munchkin.
Well, the effects that they do in this movie, it's like they're using every effect that they had at their hands. They have these giant painted walls in the background. They've got these super shiny wax flowers and leaves. Yeah. They have like the set of All Dreams, like everything that they've done from the makeup to the special effects that they could do at the time. It's just, it works and it goes all in. It's not like I was reading how when they were doing the script, they were trying to figure out what to do. And this one fucking asshole talked about cutting out all the magic. So the Scarecrow would just be like a man. Ugh. The Tin Woodman would be this like criminal that was sentenced to be placed in like a tin suit. It's like, no, fuck that. Like, This isn't one of these CBS, TV shows that would do exactly that. Instead, they just went all in. They're like, we're going to do, cartoons, but in real life. Yeah. We're doing everything and we're doing it 100%.
Can I ask you a real dumb question? This is something that me and my siblings did, and I'm pretty sure my cousins did it with us too. When we watched The Wizard of Oz together, you ever? I feel like this is so stupid. You ever try to pop Glinda's bubble with your finger?
No.
I have a memory of us running up to the screen and tapping the screen really hard, trying to get her out of the bubble.
Aw, you're so stupid and cute.
This is why they won't let me come to Munchkin Land. I'm a security risk to Glinda. Now pop the bubble. Honest to goodness, I don't know why we did that.
I did with Peter Pan. What was it? I did Clap. I watched of the you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, you have to. If you don't, Tinkerbell dies.
She dies. She's dead, so.
Yeah. Everyone, come on, you guys. That's a legit thing, right? Popping bubbles, clapping for fairies, we do it all. I want to stay in Munchkinland for just a little bit longer because I love it so much. The fact that each person has their own identity.
Love it.
Like, I feel like even now, if that were to be done today, I don't think it would be as painstakingly different. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they would have, I think that budgetary-wise, they wouldn't allow each person to be so the costume to be so creatively different.
No, for sure. And there's a lot of touches. So, like with the Scarecrow, when he is walking, he's constantly falling or walking like on the sides of his feet throughout the entire movie. And that's the kind of stuff that's like good acting, good choreography. But then later on, when they are in Oz and they're all getting their makeovers, have you ever noticed there's the part where both the Tin Man and the Scarecrow are lying on tables?
Yeah.
And the thing that's cool about it is that clearly they built these tables so that the actors could kind of like kneel in it and their heads are out. That way the people can be doing whatever to their bodies. Yet they still leave a good, like, I don't know, 2.5 feet between where their bodies are and the floor so that you can see the people behind them's feet.
Yeah.
Feet. So
Multiples.
multiple feet.
Feetsies.
So you can see their feetsies. That way, as a kid, you don't register it as like a magic trick. Whereas nowadays, I feel like it would just be CGI. Like they would just do a table and that person on it, and it would either just be like superimposing the head over some sort of, you know, dummy,
Yeah.
or they would CGI out the table and show the feets.
Yeah.
But
The feetsies.
it's like feetsies. So that now it sounds like I'm saying feces.
The one thing that there wasn't in Oz.
But little things like that table, it just goes to show the sort of attention to detail that the visual effects people had.
Yeah. Well, even you mentioned it before, the horse of a different color.
Yes.
Like that's all done with Kool-Aid. Like that was and it's still one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite things in the whole movie too. One of those, like when he because he says it, that's a horse of a different color, and then there's the horse of a different color. As a kid, I knew that was a great callback. I was like,
Yeah.
that is it.
There's so many good lines, and I laugh so hard. Like when the Tin Man does his dance, with you, which you and I both can do.
Yeah.
And then he like kind of lays down after the dance, and they all go like, "Oh, you were terrific." And he goes, "Well, I'm afraid I'm a little rusty."
Yeah.
And then again, the Tin Man, he always has the best lines when the Scarecrow gets torn apart, and then the Tin Man goes to rescue him, and he goes, "That's you all over the place."
It's just so good.
It's so good.
Or like when the witch is on top of the house and he goes, "Play ball," and just throws a fireball at them. I'm like, I love it. I live for it. It is such a smart, just like the book, it's so smart. Mm-hmm. You know what else makes me laugh?
What?
Bell out of order. Please not. Can't you read the sign?
No, it's genuinely funny. It has heart. It has so much. I mean, there's a reason why it's like the most watched film in history. It's such a good movie.
It really is. There's like we talk about so many movies and we're always like, "Oh, man, if they had done this, then it would have been perfect." This is just beginning to end. I have no issues. I don't want to recast anybody. It would be sacrilege to recast anybody.
Yep.
I mean, I do wish we could have seen, is it Buddy Epstein as the original Tin Man?
Man, I feel bad for him. That whole switcheroo with casting, and then
that was upsetting. He has the original Tin Man. Everyone knows this, I think, but the original Tin Man makeup included iron powder, and he was deathly allergic. And ended up having to go to the hospital, and he spent a lot of time in the hospital, I think.
Well, and Buddy Epstein was originally cast as the Scarecrow.
Yeah.
And then the guy who ends up, Ray Bolger.
Yeah.
Wait. Yeah, okay. He was cast as the Tin Man, and he begged Buddy Epstein to switch because he really just had his heart set on the Scarecrow. So Epstein agrees to switch, and then he has the allergic reaction, and they're already filming. They've got everything recorded. Yeah. Oh, it's devastating.
Well, you can still hear his voice in some of the recordings when they're doing one of my personal favorite songs, King of the Forest. That's one of my dream Halloween costumes. to be the Cowardly Lion with the cape of like grass and flowers and a flower pot crown.
The crown. That's another one where, like, when you talk about the the violence of the book, when the Tin Man grabs the flower pot and then takes out his axe and then just like slams it against the flower pot. I don't know. There's something about that movement that just feels so violent.
It's
to
very
me.
violent. It's like if you could do that to that, what could you do to anything?
Right.
It's just there's so many good. And every line in that song, too, is just so good, especially at the end when he's like, what do they got that I ain't got? And they go, courage. And he goes, you can say that again. Cracks me up. I'm like, oh, my goodness. It's just so smart. Oh, man.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I feel like I didn't appreciate the lion as much. And this time around when I was watching it, like, he just makes me laugh. He's so funny.
He's probably my favorite of her companions.
I was going to ask you, like, which one was your favorite? It's the lion?
It's 100% the lion, because the characterization of the Cowardly Lion has always cracked me up, especially when they're in Oz and they're getting all fixed up, and it's in the end of that song and they're going, ha 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 ha. I'm just like, I can't. The Cowardly Lion is just, there's just something about, like, I appreciate the physicality of the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, but the Cowardly Lion just is, I feel like if I were to relate to any of them, I think it would be the lion.
Aww.
I think there's a lot of times where I could use a little more courage. Like, I have plenty of heart, trust. I give it away freely. I love everything. And I mean, I think I'm okay in the brains department. But Jesse's over there going,
Nikki, you did try to pop a bubble on a TV with your finger.
I've learned from that experience. It was a scientific experience, and I've learned my lesson. Jeez.
Did you just say a scientific experience instead of a scientific experiment?
Okay, maybe I do need some break. Oh my goodness. But maybe, you know what? I think I'm the Cowardly Lion with a Scarecrow rising.
No, see, my favorite when I was little, like very little, was probably the Scarecrow. But I think everybody's first favorite is the Scarecrow just because that's clearly the one that, I was going to say Judy, the one that Dorothy likes the most.
Yeah.
But
Well, she misses him most of all.
Right. My favorite's really the Tin Man. I love the Tin Man. I've already explained like how much I love Jack Haley and I'm partial to him, but I love the Tin Man.
I am always going to say, like, if you were to ask me whose musical number I like the most, hands down, 100% Tin Man, always.
Tin Man.
Especially when you go back to that whole thing about how they wanted to do their answer to Walt Disney's Snow White, and you literally have the voice of Snow White in that song.
Yeah, she's Juliet.
Yeah. It cracks me up every time.
I love it.
I just love that dance.
I love that dance. I love that part. And that it's so whimsical, the way that they do like him falling over.
Yeah.
And like it's seamless. Like you know that there's like some sort of like string or something like assisting him in like that movement, but you can't see it at all. Yeah. It's just so fun.
And you know, to bring it into a more modern space, like The Wizard of Oz is really shaped a lot culturally. And like look at Michael Jackson. As a dance performer, he does the same move.
Right.
In his stage shows, music videos. So it's so interesting to see how it's touched so much. Even though it was considered not to be the greatest of films at the time it came out.
The cultural significance of this is just endless. I mean, Star Wars, even Ready Player One that we talked about. One thing that it never occurred to me before, but even the way that the wizard presents to Dorothy first in the book and then the way that he's presented to everybody in the movie, that's 1984. The way that The way that the big brother head like pops up to people, that's
Yeah.
the wizard. And there's no way that, George Orwell wasn't like obviously or subconsciously inspired by that, but it goes even beyond that.
Oh yeah, I would say there's not a single fantasy type thing that isn't touched by this book in this movie. Like, even look at the Neverending Story.
Right.
A child who travels to a fantasy world and picks up these travelers along the way. Like, that is literally the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, and I know that this is something that goes back a long time, but the whole idea of a female main character, and one of the earlier songs is her sitting on something talking about what she dreams of. I mean,
You
that's
mean the I Want song?
the I Want song. Like, that I Want song goes back further than Wizard of Oz, but I feel like the Wizard of Oz is probably the first time that a lot of songwriters saw that.
Yeah. And it truly focuses, it helps you narrow in on the needs and wants of your main character, and Disney has manipulated that forever. If you don't have an I Want song within the first 20 minutes of the movie, you're not going to know what the person wants.
And think about it. I mean, you talk about Disney, Snow White predates Wizard of Oz. However, I think a lot of people saw Wizard of Oz just because of it being on TV prior to them seeing Snow White because of the whole vault situation.
Oh, I would 100% agree with that. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, this one, out of everything that we've done so far, I think this one has the biggest cultural impact.
And what's interesting is I would say that aside from perhaps A Christmas Carol and maybe Fight Club, this is probably one of the best adaptations too.
Yeah.
Everything that you see in the movie for the most part is in the book, and what they cut or changed, I think, is for the better.
Oh yeah, they don't have that whole weird extra journey when they have to get back.
It's unnecessary. It's not necessary.
And they cut down all the time that Dorothy has to sleep and the scary scarecrow stares at her for a while.
Yeah, I was really missing a scene of Ray Bolger just staring at Judy Garland for 12 hours.
Honestly, there's already all these, because that was supposed to be a thing too at one point. At one point at the end of the movie, in one of the original scripts, she was supposed to say something to him when he's the farmhand, like he's leaving the farm. And she's like, I'll write you every day.
Are they fucking? Like, what does that mean?
Well, that's how they related that whole line that she says, I'll miss you most of all, Scarecrow.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it either, especially when you look at the book and you're like, he was supposed to just stand in her room and watch her sleep.
And she's a little girl. Like, I get that Judy Garland is a teenager at this point, but I don't get it. I see him as more of like a brother or a father figure than something sexual.
Yeah, I don't
like
want to
it.
think about her dating any of them. It's weird.
I don't know. You like the lion.
I don't want her dating him though. That'd be weird. No. I have a question for you about the wizard though.
Uh-oh.
So the wizard, the actor who plays the wizard is the guard at the door, bell out of order, please knock. He's also the carriage driver with the horse of a different color. He's the main guard for the wizard's, front door. Do you think, because we never actually see the wizard as his human male form with any of those people that he plays in Oz, do you think all of that is a humbug?
Yes, I do. I do. The only one that makes a little bit less sense is the doorman to the horse carriage guy, because they are seen so close in time together and they do look a little bit different. But that could just be, explained by it took them longer to walk in. Yeah. I don't know. But I do. And it kind of makes sense, because if he is running this show and is a humbug the whole time, I mean, how does he... The only way that he gets people to build him a throne room is to pretend that he's somebody else. It's like the H.H. Holmes thing. It's like he must have been lying to a bunch of people to hide who he really is.
Yeah. I'm glad you said yes, because that was... And it was something that it never dawned on me until I watched it this last time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think it was with, like, the idea that humbug was fresh in my mind from the book. And I've always known that he plays all those characters. I've just always been, like, fascinated by that. But especially the part with the throne room guard. And he's like, I'll go announce you. I was like, oh, you are such a humbug liar. I see right through this. Like, leaning back, like, I got you. I solved this case.
I just love the whole idea of, don't look at the man behind the curtain, because you think about, like, political, figures. There's always another guy behind the mouthpiece. There's always something else happening behind the curtain that you're not supposed to look at.
Yeah. There's, like, a sleight of hand.
Right.
Yeah, like some Chris Angel mind freak stuff.
Exactly like Chris Angel.
Just like mind freak, just like it. One thing that has always been weird about The Wizard of Oz for me is, why was the witch allergic to water? Like, why could water kill the witch?
The only thing that I can think of is when you think about, like, old school fairy tales and stuff, like, two of the things that are supposed to be just pure are, like, silver and water. And where you see, like, silver being used more for, elves and vampires, werewolves, like, water, I think, is also supposed to be pure. So maybe it's that. I don't know.
I mean, that makes a lot more sense.
Did you catch that in the book she's got an umbrella?
Yes.
And then in the movie, she's got an umbrella when it's the beginning part of the movie.
Oh, I didn't notice it in the movie.
Yeah, on her, like, when you see her, obviously, she's got the bike and everything, but she has an umbrella, too.
Oh, yes. When she's Mrs. Gulch.
Right.
I'm sorry, every time I think about her, Margaret Hamilton, I think of my Nana.
See, you sent me pictures of your Nana, and I feel like you're being mean.
No, we're not being mean. It's something that we used to talk about sometimes.
We would point at her and go, ha ha, wicked witch.
No, it was just one of those observations where you're like, you look like this woman, right? And she'd be like, oh, stop it. And I'd be like,
aww.
No, Nana, it's interesting. Can I tell people that was you? Like, that'd be really cool. And she'd be like, oh. She'd go, oh, Nikki, whatever. And I'd be like, oh, okay. I don't know. So, like, in that respect, when
do you mean it, like, in a sweet way? Like, you see her and you think of...
Yeah. It's like every time I watch The Wizard of Oz, like, that sounds so... Now it sounds mean saying it. Like, oh, every time I watch The Wizard of Oz, I think of my Nana. Like,
well, I mean, it's like... well, again, this is a little bit less mean because he's not Wicked Witch, but... John Cusack. I never met my mom's dad, my grandfather, but when the photos I've seen of him, I feel like he looks a little bit like John Cusack. So there's a weird thing where when I watch John Cusack movies, I'm like, oh, maybe that was my grandpa. I don't know.
Your grandpa's John Cusack. Sorry, that's okay. My Nana is the Wicked Witch of the West, so we're in the same boat somewhere.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, mine's not really an insult. Like, John Cusack's not a villain.
If you go back and listen to our High Fidelity episode, maybe it'll change
maybe
your mind.
Maybe he was. Yeah.
No, it wasn't ever, like, done in spite or in malice. It was just, like, one of those observations. She has such a similar face. So I thought it was always interesting. And speaking of Margaret Hamilton, I've always felt so bad when you find out that she was, like, she caught on fire.
Agree.
When she was doing that.
It's such a good effect, though.
It really is. And you know what? That was one of my favorite parts of the Great Movie Ride at MGM Studios.
I knew we were going to talk about this.
Well, it's such a big part of that ride. You go in, for anyone, I don't know anyone who's listening to this who's never actually been on that ride. Because I just assume it's just our family listening to this podcast. But you ride the movie, so you go through all these movie scenes, and the biggest one, right before the end of the ride, you are in Oz. And when I can remember the first time I rode that ride, and you get into that section, and like I said, I've always, like, I want to go over the rainbow. And that was it. It felt real.
It did.
Like, and then the witch pops up, and they have a full conversation with your car driver. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, when, there's some rides at Disney right now, like the Rise of Resistance, that it's just so, like, you are in it. You are in it. And one of the only rides that really made me feel quite that in it really was a great movie ride, and that scene in particular, it's just like the way that they did it was so perfect, and they had the exact same attention and detail. You just look around, and everywhere there's like just like the little flowers and the plants and little animatronics coming out as the munchkins. It was perfect.
Yeah. R.I.P.
R.I.P. for real.
Oh, that's probably like the one. Like, I know that I heard that the new ride is really fun that they have there, but I wish there was a way that they could have done both.
It's like one of our friends died.
Yeah.
To be honest, it really does feel like that heavy for me. Like, I can't, I miss it. I miss her.
Well, here's some more interesting news about, let's move back on to Aussian news. Did you know that at one point Liza Minnelli was married to Jack Haley's son?
Yes, I did.
How beautiful is this? How gorgeous is this situation?
Yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of overlaps with people like that, but that one is really interesting.
Yeah. And she also played, I think she plays Dorothy in the Return to Oz movie, and
I think you're right.
Mickey Rooney, who took Judy to the premiere of The Wizard of Oz, took Liza to the premiere of the Return to Oz movie.
I have some thoughts on Mickey Rooney, and I don't want to get into them.
Okay. We won't talk about Mickey Rooney. We'll save that for when we watch Phantom of the Megaplex.
You want to hear something? And don't tell my husband. I used to think that Jackie Haley was kind of cute.
He was cute.
He was cute, right?
Yeah, he was super cute. And I loved that he gave his character, he gave the Tin Man a completely different voice than his actual human self. But I feel so bad about the repercussions of giving his character that voice.
Yeah, because it lingers.
Yeah. Because of the way the Tin Man talks in the movie, we now have the cultural saying of friend of Dorothy, which relates back to just like being gay, you know? But I wonder how that felt to him. Like, I wish I could ask him, like, do you realize how, like, that's another thing where you look at The Wizard of Oz and you see how culturally the ripples have spread with this. Like, it's now, it's not just TV and film. It's, average everyday life.
I think, that may have been unfortunate for him, but for, a large group of people, it's something that was probably comforting, something that, gave inspiration and was a home for people. You want to talk about, there's no place like home. This movie is that for a lot of people. And it's funny because I had this conversation talking about Princess Leia. Like, my husband bought me this pin and it's Princess Leia and it says Trailblazer, and he's like, oh, I wonder why it doesn't say leader. And I said, well, because Leia is now beyond just the character Leia.
Yeah.
Princess Leia is a symbolism for, strength and feminism and, the power to persevere. And that's kind of Wizard of Oz for a lot of people, particularly within the queer community.
Yeah.
And the whole friend of Judy thing. I mean, just think about the idea that you would have to use a code to talk to someone. I can't imagine having to do that, but the fact that it's there is, hopeful for some people at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, it's still just so shocking to think how it's like dropping a pebble in the ocean and just watching it ripple out. How this film, whether you know it or not, has touched so many different aspects of your life. Mm-hmm. It's just so crazy.
I love this movie.
Oh, me too.
You know what I don't love, though?
What?
The apple trees.
Oh, because they're mean.
And they're scary.
They are scary. But once again, just like the book, the Scarecrow is a genius. And he just didn't know it.
Yeah.
Those trees throwing apples at him.
Another thing that makes me laugh, though, is that, you know when the Scarecrow's on fire?
Why does this make you laugh?
Well, hold on. No, Scarecrow being on fire is horrible.
Yes.
And it's terrifying me when I was a kid. The part that makes me laugh is that the guy that's covered in oil is the one who puts him out.
Oh my goodness, I never realized it.
Dorothy could have seen a horror show that day.
She did. She melts a woman. And every time when the witch is melting, which, once again, from Wizard of Oz, take a look at Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you've got the same sort of melting. Or even looking at Nightmare Before Christmas, when he's like, my bugs.
Right.
But when she is melting, everyone is just standing there watching her melt. I mean, at least in the book, what's really interesting is she gets hit with the water and turns into this weird dust. And and Dorothy sweeps her out the front door. In this, she's just a puddle? Like, ew.
Get a mop. Get a mop and a bucket.
I'm thinking about Judy Garland singing WAP while she sweeps up the Wicked Witch of the West. Man,
it would be great.
I'm here for it. I'm all in. It's just, I mean, yeah, there's really nothing bad to say about this. Even like the ending of the film, when you realize that all that you need is what you have.
And you've had it all along.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's something, honestly, it's something that I think more and more people need to remember.
Agree.
Like, even, especially now, when we're in COVID times, like, unfortunately, we are still in COVID times. We're going to have our 1-year anniversary of this podcast, and I will still have not left my apartment. And it's just one of those things where you think about it and you're like, if anything, this last year has taught me that if it's not here, I don't need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am capable of so much. I feel like I had a Dorothy journey. I feel like 2020 was our trip to Oz. And we did not kill a witch. But we've got a vaccine, so I guess we're close. But yeah, I just feel like it's definitely something, the thought process of having what you already thought that you needed is something that I really do think that more people need to remember. You don't need, like, the high-end stuff. You don't need dream vacations. Instagram tells you that you do. You really don't. You have what you need. And if you don't have it, come here. I'll give you a socially distanced hug.
Dorothy, when when she is in Oz, has the power to go home the whole time, but also when she was home, she was wanting to go over the rainbow and then realizes that the whole time she had home.
Yeah. She didn't need to look for it. It was always there.
Right?
So good. I mean, I'm sure that she'd be happier if her home didn't have those murderous pigs, but whatever. Oh, goodness.
Well, and the idea that even if, Dorothy becomes like a career woman and wants to get out of Kansas, there's always going to be part of her that is homesick.
Yeah. And I think that plays out with us, too.
Sure.
Like, I'm homesick all the time. And I'm home every day.
Well, I mean, there's a thing where, you know, my husband and I, we're from more like South Florida area, and we're happy to be up in the Central Florida area. But the minute that we like eat something that's like from back home or whatever, like you get that immediate nostalgia that's just like so nice. And it's like, it's always there in your brain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's those little things, like a little sense memory, like me trying to pop Glinda's bubble. It just brings you back to a different time and place. That's how you can travel over the rainbow.
One thing I forgot, you know, at the beginning of the movie when they have all the little chicks?
Yeah.
I just remember being a kid and wanting to hold one of them so bad because they were so freaking cute.
Oh, do you think they survived the twister? Or should I say it in a twister?
I can't answer that question because I know they didn't, and now I'm really upset. God,
I'm sorry.
They're all dead.
Everything's dead. Go back to Oz.
I do like how at the beginning when they're preparing for the twister, okay, I saw them just a few minutes ago, and they were all perfectly fine. The minute that the twister shows up, it's chaos. Oh, yeah. Like, the horses are going everywhere. It's like, who the fuck opened the barn?
And then someone just flings the door open and is like, run for your life. It's a twister.
It's a twister.
Dorothy?
You know who I do think is, like, kind of the star of the movie, though? Toto.
Oh, 100% Toto.
I love Toto. He's such a good boy.
Well, I had never read the trivia for The Wizard of Oz until, because there's so much folklore about it anyways. It's just, you know, in the zeitgeist. Like, everyone knows.
It's legend.
Yeah, everyone knows the story. They thought, like, a munchkin hung himself. Wasn't a thing. It's a crane, everybody. Don't believe the hype. Nobody died on the set. But I didn't realize that Toto got injured.
No.
Yeah. When Toto is trying to escape the witch's castle, one of the witch's guards stepped on Toto. And Toto had to take 2 weeks off of work. Aww. And they had to bring in his understudy to do some stuff. So there's technically
so this is like a show. It's a showgirl situation.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Wow. That little understudy Toto was just like throwing marbles on the set.
Just like kibbles and bits. But and also the other sad thing was that the trainer who owned Toto, both Margaret Hamilton and Judy Garland fell in love with Toto, and both of them really wanted to adopt Toto. Judy was really wanting to adopt Toto, and the handler wouldn't let her have him.
No, because that's their fucking dog. Of course not.
Well, apparently this was like a Hollywood dog trainer. So they probably had... I wonder if she supplied the second Toto.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't let anyone take Zuzu from me. That's my little angel.
No, of course not.
That's my little buddy. But I mean, it's hard to say no to Judy Garland, too. Like, if the ghost of Judy Garland came into my house and was like, give me your dog, I'd have to say yes. And then I'd be like, please sing Over the Rainbow. And she'd be like, oh, no. And I'd be like, please. And she'd go, no. And I'd be like, please. And she goes, okay.
No, I love Toto because Toto is so... you do kind of get a little anxious when Toto's very close to dancing feet.
Yeah.
So it only makes sense that Toto got injured because, of course.
Yeah.
But Toto's always so happy, and I know it's a she in real life, right?
Yeah, I think Toto's a she.
Yeah, but Toto in the movie is a he, so I will refer to him as a he. And his little tail is wagging. Yeah. He's so cute and fluffy. Aww.
When he falls asleep in the poppy field, that's when I get really overly emotional. Like, that's when I'm like, I sit up a little straighter and I'm like, oh God, not Toto, not the dog. It's okay, everybody. It turned out fine. Glinda showed up. Glinda doesn't show up. You know what that leads me to believe? Glinda is watching this whole thing unravel. Like, sitting at home on a couch with some popcorn, just like, okay, that sounds good. She knew the whole time how to get everybody what they wanted, and she was just like, just gonna wait.
Well, I think that Glinda's kind of like sitting back like, oh, not my problem.
Yep.
And then she sees certain things happening, like, I have to intervene.
It's like when you're, it's like when you work on a team and you all have like one main phone line and it's everyone's responsibility to pick up the phone. Or like when you're at your old house and you had a landline and the phone would ring and you'd be like, someone's going to get it. Are you gonna?
Someone else is gonna do it.
You gonna pick up the phone? You're not gonna. I'm gonna. Fine, I'll pick up the phone. Like that's what her saving them in the poppy field reminded me of. I was like,
which, by the way, when they shot that, they were covered in asbestos.
Yeah.
So that sounds safe.
This whole film was super safe.
Looks great though.
We still love it. We still love it.
Like the lion, like his costume was like something like 90 pounds, so they called it the stink suit.
Well, apparently there were parts of actual lion on his suit.
Yep.
That's why they couldn't wash it.
Not problematic at all.
You can't do that now. And the scarecrow's makeup left permanent lines on his face. Because, it was one of those things that I never really truly noticed before. And maybe it's because I always had, like, a really crappy TV. And now we have, like, a really good, like, high-def, like, 4K TV. And you can see those lines really well. Could you imagine walking around for a year with those?
No.
Yeah, me either. That would suck. And apparently, the Tin Man had to stand up on one of those reclining thingies just like C-3PO did in Star Wars. Because he couldn't sit down.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Marilyn Monroe did for most of her career, too, because her dresses were too tight.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I always found so sad is that because the makeup was so bizarre and so scary for the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, people would stare at them if they went to the commissary, so they just ate on set by themselves.
It's so sad.
And I don't know if anyone else has watched those videos. They used to show them on TCM all the time.
I love those.
Yeah, the end of year roundup, and it was always like the big meal where every celebrity from like MGM would be in one room eating together. Could you imagine they're panning across? And there's just like the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. It's just like, what is going on? Courage. I'll pull them up. I could talk about this forever.
I love this movie.
I mean, it's so good. But unfortunately, I think we have to go back to Kansas.
I don't wanna.
Nobody wants
to stay in
to.
Oz.
Kansas is gray and boring. I don't want to work on a farm.
No offense to Kansas.
Yeah, sorry, Kansas. We just want to stay in Oz like 10 minutes longer. Just soak it in.
Oh, well, is it time to rate it?
Yes,
Oh,
it is. So for the 2021 book list, the book rankings, as of right now, we have in the first slot, it's still a tie between Waiting to Exhale and High Fidelity. Then we have The Birds, Ready Player One, and the very bottom of the list is the book that shall not be named. So I'm not going to name it. Where would you put this book?
Number 1.
I would probably...
Well...
I was going to say, I still really like Waiting to Exhale, but I'm wondering if I would put... I think it's time to separate.
I agree.
And I think that my order would probably be maybe High Fidelity, Wizard of Oz, Waiting to Exhale, The Birds, and Ready Player One.
See, I think that mine would be The Wizard of Oz, High Fidelity, Waiting to Exhale.
I think it's funny that we both put High Fidelity before Waiting to Exhale.
I've been thinking a lot about it.
Yeah.
And it's that thing where good art makes you think a lot. And I've been thinking a lot about High Fidelity over the last, few weeks. I think High Fidelity is over Waiting to Exhale.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something that I'm still thinking about the TV show.
I know.
And I think that's why I keep wanting High Fidelity to be the top spot. But
Also, are we, when we talk about this, for me, I might, for me, I would say that High Fidelity, the book, is probably better than The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, but I think that The Wizard of Oz is better than any of the movies
That is
on
true.
the list so far.
That is true. We do have to add in the film aspect to it. So in that respect, I would probably agree with you. Oz, Fidelity, Waiting to Exhale, The Birds, Ready Player One, and Eat, Pray, Love. Oh, I said it. I'm cursed now. If you say it 3 times, she shows up in your apartment.
Now I'm going to throw out my spaghetti cacio de pepe.
Oh no, she's going to send you to Bali. All right, so that's where we're at right now. Wizard of Oz, High Fidelity, The Birds, Ready Player One, and the book that shall not be named. We did it, everybody.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
I know. Next month is a big month. The month of April is a big month. Because not only do we have the anniversary of the tinking. I could really use that brain right about now. Not only is it, tax month, but we also have the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic and my birthday.
Woo!
Woo! Because of the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, we are going to be reading A Night to Remember, which I think has been noted as one of the definitive books on the sinking of the Titanic. So, facts.
I'm very excited. I like Titanic,
Yeah.
knowledge and facts and stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Did you ever do the Titanic exhibit in Orlando?
Yes,
Did you do it with me?
Yes, I did. No, I did it with my aunt.
Oh, I can't remember who
I died.
Really?
I was dead. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. That was Mrs. Astor. I'm so sorry. I can't help you. I'm first class. I still have my ticket somewhere.
I don't have my ticket anywhere, but I would honestly do it again. I love Titanic stuff. I'm a nerd for Titanic.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to get into that. I can't wait to talk about the that whole I Drive Titanic exhibit with you.
Oh, I can't wait to do a deep dive into the Titanic.
Okay, James Cameron.
Whatever floats your boat.
Or sinks it. Oh my goodness, I'm super excited.
Me too.
I love that we're going from the wonderful land of Oz to the most horrifying boat trip in history.
Again, it's a ship. It's not a boat. It's not the boat of dreams.
Okay, Captain. Oh, Christina, as always, it's a pleasure getting to do this with you. So thank you for joining me today.
It's been a merry old time.
I mean, we are basically working on Aussian time. We get up at noon, work for an hour, go back home. And thanks to Jessie.
Yes, thank you, Jessie.
Yeah, for handling all of our audio stuff. Whoop whoop. All right, and we will see you all next time. Get ready. Get your life vests ready, because it's going down. The ship and the reading of it. Oh, okay. Bye, Christina.
Bye, Nikki.
Bye.